There are two statements that I have heard from most of my adult life when I'm having conversations with women around health and particularly on the topic of cooking for ourselves. One of the statements is, I don't have time to cook. The other one is, I don't like to cook for one. And that is one that I did not hear so much when I was younger, but for whatever reason, getting older, I am hearing it more and more. And obviously, as we age, the people around us who are also maybe have gone through divorce, maybe are widowed. So there are lots of reasons why, as I'm getting older, I am hearing it more and more often. But it's just been coming up so much, and I really wanted to make this video mostly to talk about that and to offer up another way of looking at things. So one thing I want you to think about is that if you fall into this category of thinking that you don't like to cook for one, I would like you to rephrase that statement and say, I don't like to cook for myself. Okay, I don't like to cook for myself. And then sit with that for a moment and notice that something about that feels off, something about that feels uncomfortable. And I think in many ways hurtful, because when you say you don't like to cook for one, the one you're talking about is yourself. It's you. It's not some stranger out there. And I bring this up not to create pain or discomfort or to pick on you, but to really highlight the fact that the reason that even a statement like that can flow out of us so easily in this society is because we're living in a world that has taught us to give our time and our energy to everything but us. Plain and simple. That's the only reason that any human would say anything in any way that suggests that they are last on their list of things to take care of on during their existence on this planet. It's only because we're in an environment that has just, not, I don't know, I'm not going to say that this was intentional because it's besides the point. The point is the end result is everything that we've been taught, everything that we're surrounded by, the content we consume, everything has somehow implanted and programmed us, I should say, to very easily make ourselves last, right? And say something that basically tells our cells that we don't like to cook for ourselves, literally. So that statement, plus the other one that I was talking about around, I don't have time to cook. That's another one that very often is still coming from this unhealthy modern world, in the sense of, again, there are so many things that call for our attention, that call for our time. And it's very easy to legitimately go through a day thinking that we don't have time, where really a lot of time is also created based on our choices, because we all have 24 hours and we all do vastly different things in those 24 hours. And there does come a point where we just decide that something is important enough that we are going to make the time for it. That's typically how we get anything done in life. Doesn't matter what it is. We just decide that we're going to find a way to move some things around so that we can make time for ourselves. Because we matter, you matter that much. And a world in which you are last on your list, like, what's the point of that, right? So if you're watching this video, you most likely are looking to improve your health in some way, shape, or form. You're probably sick and tired of dragging whatever discomfort, whatever pain, whatever symptoms. You're tired of dragging them with you year after year. And most likely, that when it comes to food, that if you were to consume more whole food, i.e. cook more of it, you would be in a better place, right? So that's probably why you're watching this, because you're curious. And I want you to lean into that curiosity, right? So those two statements that I mentioned, they're very firm. they're strong declarations, and what they actually end up doing is that they keep us stuck when we say I don't have time or I don't like to cook for one. That kind of just holds us where we are because there is no flexibility in those statements. There's no room for something new to come in, and they just keep us where we are in the discomfort with the symptoms that we have. So lean into the curiosity, for example, that drove you to watch this video and start asking questions. Just be curious and say, what if? What if I did decide to cook? What would I cook? What is it that you like? Because we all like certain foods. What would that be? Just play the game. Forget about the actual doing of the cooking and just play with the concept of what would I cook for myself? What kind of treat? If I were to pamper myself through food, what would that look like? So, because when you start asking that open ended question, then your mind is open to other solutions, right? Because the idea, when we talk about cooking your own meals, it really boils down to the fact that you want to eat more whole foods. And if you decide that, let's say you decide, I don't want to cook at all, but I'm going to make it a priority to start eating more whole foods, okay? And beyond salads, right? Because salads are not going to get you far. You get bored with salads like real meals. So if you decide that this is important, then now you can say, okay, what other options are there for me to eat whole foods? Are there other options? And it turns out they are. Now, I'm going to give you a list, and some of this you may or may not like in the sense that some of them might require either usually more financial investment on from your part, right? But I'm doing this to illustrate the fact that there are other options. And the thing for you to do is to decide, do you have time or do you have money to put into eating healthy? And or can you make the time? Okay, so for example, if you have the money for it, you can pay for a healthy meal delivery kit, right? So there's services that will basically deliver like the ingredients that have kind of been pre-portioned, and then you just kind of assemble the meal, and maybe you heat it up, or and you're good to go, right? But the idea is that these are whole ingredients. Typically, if it's a good service, it's made in the same way you'd make it in your own kitchen, right? With clean ingredients. That's one option. Now, those will run you way more than buying your own ingredients for sure, but they're out there, they're convenient. You could also go for a fully prepared meal delivery service where you don't even have to do any kind of assembly, right? You just heat it up and you eat. And I'm not talking here about frozen dinners, because those are not really those are not really good food, not all of them. But there are meal delivery services where you don't even have to do any assembly. Again, it will cost, but it's an option. You could hire yourself a personal chef to batch cook for you weekly. And still going to cost you more than what it would cost for you to buy your own ingredients. But I remember years ago when I was living in Colorado, in my local city, there was a dietitian who offered this type of service. So she would cook meals in her own home and then just deliver it to families around town. So that is an option where you can find somebody locally who's trained like that dietitian, who also likes to cook, and who will who will do this, for the right compensation. You could find local restaurants in your area, right, that have meals and that do delivery, and so on and so forth. So there are some options like that. So if you're somebody who are like, I don't have time, but you've got the financial means to invest into it, then those are options. That's how you can still get more whole food into your body without having to do the work yourself. Now, let's say that you can find the time. Maybe you decide to make some time. Well, one of the quickest ways is to, or more efficient ways is to batch cook or meal prep. So this would be setting aside one day in the week where you take maybe 3 to 4 hours and you cook, 5, 6, even full 7 days of meals, and then you just reheat throughout the week. It's a great time saver. This is one of the types of recipes that I have in my membership, where I have a collection all for meal prepping, and I'm adding to that every month, because there's just a real practical need for this. And when you have the right recipes, this is actually not as exhausting as you might think. Okay. So that's an option. Also, getting things like a slow cooker or pressure cooker, there are also recipes specifically for that out there. I also have, again, some of those that I'm adding in my membership for people so that every month they can use them to make their lives easier. So this requires some of your time, but if you have, a system or a space like the membership that takes care of it for you, or if you have a blog, there are blogs out there that specialize in just these types of recipes. You can go on those blogs, read through the recipes, find the ones you like, save them, on your computer, create your own Pinterest boards if you want, however you want to do that. But there are options. There truly are options. So that's really the main thing that I want to highlight for you is to just ask those questions so that you can be more receptive to solutions. Sometimes you hear about people in neighborhoods or neighbors who do an exchange of meals. Sometimes, I have a neighbor here who another neighbor allowed her to use her juicer, right? Anytime she needed juices, she could just go over there and get some. So you'd be amazed at all the ways that you can incorporate these things, even when you don't have all the equipment like a juicer, for example, like my neighbor, right? So again, rather than just say I don't have time or I don't like to cook, remember that this is you're talking about, and you have to decide at some point, do you want to stay in this state? Because there is nothing more frustrating than to feel stuck in life. There is something about it that really just kills our vitality, right? Because stuckness also means stuck energy. You know in your heart that you have the potential to be different, to be healthy, to be all the things, right? We know that we all have this because we can see it. There are other people around you, most likely, who are thriving, and there's nothing special about anybody. They didn't come from another planet. They're human, just like you. And they don't have some magic superpower that you don't. They really, we all think, well, some people are more disciplined. No, it's really just boils down to you just wake up and you're like, I'm fed up and I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And really, quite frankly, sometimes that's what it takes, where things have to really get so bad that now you are just forced to do something. That is one way to implement change. But I would say, from experience, that if you can avoid getting to that point, because by the time you get to that point, things get really painful. So if you want to save yourself some time, some heartache, start wherever you are now. And let's say you don't want to meal prep, and let's say you also don't want to necessarily cook every day. Okay, maybe you cook every other day or every 2 days. Just start with some rhythm, any rhythm. It's better than nothing, all right? So that's what I wanted to share in this video. And I would really like to get your perspective on this because, the subject of cooking and prepping for ourselves and making time for ourselves, it's a difficult one. It can be a touchy one. I really do think that every human wants to take care of themselves. It's just that we are such products of our environment, and it is so easy to be swayed by all of the noise and the distractions out there that say you should be doing something else, and that your work matters more than you, and the other thing matters more than you. And then when we do get some free time, maybe we spend more of it on social media, doom scrolling, potentially feeling bad about ourselves, right? And then just perpetuating this cycle. That time we spend on social media could be spent meal prepping, right? It could be spent just daydreaming about something more pleasant versus going down a dopamine spiral that just hijacks you and hijacks your ability to execute on your right as a human being to take care of yourself and to prioritize yourself. So, on that note, like I said, if you found this helpful, I'd love to hear from you. Give it a like, share with anybody else that could benefit from this perspective, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye bye.